Thank you very much, Senator Laurel Lizama, and a very good night to all my cabinet colleagues, party officers, particularly Mrs. June Williams is here with us once again. And of course, at the head table, I have my cabinet colleague, Minister Senator Clarence Chambarat, and of course, your Member of Parliament, Minister Foster Cummings. It's always such a good feeling for me to be in this constituency, La Horquetta Talparo, because I have pleasant memories of coming here the first time the PLM came when this constituency was formed, and I was given the assignment to come and speak to you as the first PLM party officer to speak to the people of La Horquetta Talparo as the new constituency. I'll have a good feeling about this. But I have another memory of going with Patrick Manning to Sumat Gardens in 1987 to a meeting one afternoon, 3 o'clock one Sunday afternoon, and nobody came to the meeting. There was nobody. And I was asked, start the meeting, so I started the meeting, and we had a meeting, I spoke, Mr. Manning spoke, and we left. So tonight is a wonderful meeting we're having here with this whole half full of people here in La Horquetta, and I feel so good that so many of you have come out here to hear the PNM's words of hope, of confidence, of comfort, and to tell you that what you're hearing from other people is another reality. This is the real Trinidad and Tobago. You would have heard my colleague, Senator Rambarat, talk about Caroni lands and what has happened to the 2-acre parcel of lands, and how only 14% of those lands are in fact engaged in any agricultural activity. But you know what happened there? Something you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, don't know. Those were agricultural lands that were made available in a program that said that those people who were leaving the Caroni sugar business when sugar was forced to be closed, I'm not going to go into that tonight, but we as a sugar producing country, when we lost our international markets, Europe and the United States, and we were assisted out of the business by the EU, one of the things that happened was that those persons, listen to me very carefully, those persons who were interested in moving from state agriculture in Caroni to their own private agricultural enterprise and needed land to do that were identified to have land. That is where the land should have gone. Some of them, led by the politicians, many of whom are still around, went to court and argued that they must get those lands as a right of having worked in Caroni. And strangely enough, stranger things have happened. A judge ruled that they were each entitled to a piece of Caroni land. That was the first situation. And as a result of that, every employee of Caroni, whether they want to farm or not, were entitled to a plot of land, either under the housing program land or the agricultural land, the 2.5-acre parcels. Many of those persons had no interest whatsoever in continuing in agriculture, and we knew that. And that is why the program was supposed to be for those persons who were interested in continuing in agriculture. And initially, when that land was distributed, there was a caveat on it, that if the land is to be disposed of, you had to get permission to dispose of it. You couldn't just sell it off, because it's agricultural land, and if you were not interested in agriculture, well then the government should know that and should do something about it. As soon as the UNC came into office, they removed that restriction, thereby making every single one of those parcels of land available to be sold in the land trade and the land business in this country. So the land is being sold for business, for land grabbing, for housing, whatever. And those who got that land for free, what are those parcels of land being sold for now? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Or as high as 500,000, depending on where they're located. Understand? That is what has happened to agricultural land. That's why there has been no commensurate agricultural production in keeping with the amount of land that was distributed. So when you hear UNC people talking about land tenure, they're trying to lead you astray to make you believe that there's some ineptness on the part of the government of the state in giving people land tenure. I tell you something, I chair the cabinet every Thursday morning whenever we meet. And I can't recall a single cabinet meeting where this minister has not brought a handful of leases for renewal every Thursday. And the one thing about it I could tell you, because there are largely no state land in Tobago, all of that land distribution is in Trinidad, where people got state land as leases on the easiest of terms. And sometimes I make a joke, I ask the minister, do you have any for any Tobago people? Because in Trinidad, there's a lot of state land. And a lot of people have state land, either living on it or farming on it. And the ministry keeps renewing those leases. One of these days, I'll have the minister tell the parliament how many leases we have renewed since we came into office. And interestingly, how many were renewed during the period 2010 to 2015? Because when you hear them talking now, you would think that when they were in government, they were just going along, doing the right thing and doing it in large volumes. Absolutely never happened. All they were interested in is themselves. Because a lot of people got their hand on state land under very dubious circumstances, not about farming, but about benefiting themselves. And that is one of the reasons why some of them want nothing to do with property tax, because that property tax will identify fish from fowl. But I tell you something. I've come here tonight to join my colleague Foster Cummings, because as Minister of Youth, I wanted to hear from the minister his grasp of the portfolio he's given, and to hear where it falls in what we are doing going forward as a government managing the country's affairs in a very difficult period. We have taken a budget to the parliament a couple of weeks ago. The debate on that budget was concluded in the lower house last night. The budget was so well structured, so well put together in a very difficult time that it could easily have been a budget for an easier and better time, but it was done in a difficult time, and it was so well received that people started saying the budget was an election budget. But by the time we got to voting on it, as in everything else, we have an opposition who wanted no part of any way forward in this country. Would you believe that when the budget debate was taking place, not one opposition member engaged one single item in that budget that is about going forward and doing something positive, especially for young people? Everything that Foster Cummings mentioned tonight, you can find it somewhere in that budget. Did you hear any opposition person say, okay, A and B and C, we are happy with that, but we have a problem with F, G, and A? No. They had no interest. This was the Faris budget. Because the opposition has an obsession in trying to get rid of Faris. So they convert the whole budget into Faris. And then, when the debate, I think it was the second day of the debate, it was Saturday evening, we were supposed to be debating the budget for another 4 days. Saturday evening, they went and filed motion of privilege that Faris say that Kamla family renting something to the government. Rightly or wrongly, Faris said that. But was that sufficient for them to abandon the budget? So they went during the afternoon and filed that motion. When such a motion is filed, they put it to the speaker, the Speaker mentioned it to the floor, and they had the 5 minutes of fame where Munlal got up and read out that Faris is the worst because he said that Prasad Bisesa family have matter renting somewhere. And when that was done, they had accomplished their mission. Not the $52 billion budget, you know. It was that they did get a motion of privilege against Faris. And when the motion was finished and the Speaker came back to the floor to continue the budget debate, 9 UNC people in the parliament said, we don't know part, we done with that. You see Khadija Amin on the video telling Munlal, get up and talk. Munlal said, me? And then she said, well, Minister of Finance, wind up the debate. That was Khadija Amin, the MP for St. Augustine, telling the Minister of Finance to wind up the debate because you know why? They had no interest in the content and measures in the budget. They were only concerned about bringing down the Attorney General. So they managed to get a motion of privilege and they believed that was something. Absolutely distracted and lazy and worthless people. So when the Speaker called 9 people, nobody on their side wanted to speak. The Speaker turned to the Minister of Finance and called on him to wind up the debate. You know, within 5 minutes, the UNC put out a statement, written statement signed by Kamla Prasad Bisesa saying that the government collapsed the debate. The last person to speak in that debate was the Member of Parliament for W. Amira, who gave a sterling performance in that debate, and we were waiting for their response. We were waiting for their response. They said, we have no response, wind up the debate. That's what happened in our parliament. That is what happened in our parliament. And right on cue, they were there to tell you a lie, hoping that you were not following the debate, or we wouldn't tell you, or you wouldn't see it on wherever else, that this is actually what happened. Who uttered the words to the Minister of Finance? The Minister of Finance is here. Why wind up the debate? That was the MP for St. Augustine. But we have been working without them, and we will continue to work without them. They have no interest in the people of Trinidad and Tobago. None whatsoever. So we have a lot of young people here in this particular part of the country. This is a new development, relatively new development. A lot of young people here, and the issues that young people all over this country have now is, what is my country holding out to me at this time in my life when I should be very productive, either preparing to be a contributor or I'm a contributor and I need help to contribute better. What does the future hold for young people in this country? I could tell you, when I was a young person in school, those days the country didn't have very much, but I knew that there was something there for me if when I went to school, I focused on school, or I keep my vision on wanting to be something down the road, there were avenues and help. Later on, a fair amount of money came into this country in the 70s. And those young people who are around then, I could tell you the amount of public money spent on their development. Whether it was education, health, jobs, job creation, the government. And then there came another period of time during the Patrick Manning era when young people had another boost because the country's wealth had improved. You had a visionary government in office. We ended up with the University of Trinidad and Tobago. We ended up with GATE. We ended up with CDAP. All of those things were available to people at that time. But what is available to people now? What is? Because times change. I could tell you, when I became Prime Minister of this country in September 2015, one of the issues in front of me immediately is, where is the government going to get the resources to drive the economy, to create opportunity for those persons who require opportunity for their life going forward? 2015 into 2016. You hear them talking about debt now? Debt. That was the time when the biggest piece of debt was facing the government of Trinidad and Tobago. We were facing a debt of $6 billion to be paid in 2016. Because in 2015, the state was contracted with the unions, the public sector union, for a back pay of 15%. That was a contract which we could not ignore, and we did not ignore it. We went and we found the money by borrowing. That is what creates debt. When you borrow, you create debt. And we paid the workers the back pay, and the workers continue to get the improved salary going forward. So when you hear spokespersons in this country saying workers got nothing under this government, they got two things. They got a huge back pay, and they got new salaries going forward in a period when the country's revenues were nosediving because of the international market for oil and gas. Those are the facts. Nobody in this country could refute those facts. But we still have to focus on what do we do for the generation that we are responsible for. Those of us who are adults, this country has been very good to us, and many of us have already got what the country could reasonably give. But what about those who have got nothing, like the young people here in Horquetta and elsewhere in this country? What does the country hold out to them? And that is why I went early in my tenure to the boardroom at Ansa Makal. I went to the boardroom at Neil and Massey, and I said to them, you are the ones who have money at your disposal, and you are the ones who require to grow the economy in the private sector. What do you want to do? And if there's anything you want to do and the government could help and facilitate, just let us know, and the government will make the way easy for you. Just tell us how we can help. That was the conversation I carried to the boardroom of Ansa Makal and Neil and Massey, two of our largest conglomerates in Trinidad and Tobago. And you know why I did that? Because while we are happy that these kinds of monies, which they control or can access, are being spent by those companies growing elsewhere in the world, we also want them to grow here in Trinidad and Tobago. When I hear about an investment being made by a Trinidad and Tobago company in Jamaica or in St. Lucia, as they are doing now, or in Costa Rica, as they are doing now, okay, we're happy with that because we are spreading our wings as a nation. But what about a similar kind of investment here in Trinidad and Tobago? A Trinidad and Tobago company investing in St. Lucia and Grenada and Jamaica does not create an employment opportunity for a person here in La Horquetta. You need to have that investment made in Trinidad and Tobago so that they can have opportunities, so the company could be growing here in Trinidad and Tobago or growing outside as they do. And that is what this government understands. I don't think our friends understand that. Because you know what they do? You know what they do? The minute they see the government encouraging an investment from the private sector, they start to bawl and shout, corruption, corruption, corruption. Who is he? Who is she? You know why? Because that is all they know, and that is all they did when they were in office. So they believe that we are doing that too. But fellow citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we are not doing that. We are genuinely mobilizing the private sector to spend money in Trinidad and Tobago. You heard the Minister of Agriculture tonight mention Aripo Savannah. He's right there, just across. You know where it is. I spoke about it from this platform before it happened, and it's happening now. I told you it was going to happen. It's happening now. The government had 250 cows there with almost 200 workers on the government payroll. I told you some of the cows were there for 7 years, never make a calf. And sometimes you discover one morning 10 gone, 15 gone, nobody knows who to fit. That's what taxpayers were paying for. And the 1,000 acres of land was underutilized. This minister, under a PNM government, we made arrangements to change that. And one, we got the private sector to make substantial millions of dollars of investment in real agriculture. That's what we did. So today, if you do what I did recently on my way to Tobago, the plane flew over and I looked down at Aripo, and I was so pleased at what I saw. Real farming taking place. I'm told $22 million already spent, and a further 30 or 40 million to be spent creating agricultural production, not agricultural talk. That's why the minister could tell you in the lands at La Gloria in the south and elsewhere in Mayaro, we are taking steps to get the private sector to spend their money on agricultural production, because two things. When the government spends it in a government program, you do not get the kind of production and productivity that is required. And two, you hear the same people talking about too much debt. You hear them talking about the government has borrowed too much. So if the government is to do what those private sector people are doing, the government could only do it by borrowing more money. So what do they want? They don't want you to borrow more because the debt is already high, but they want agriculture to grow. And they ask, where are the jobs? Where are the jobs? The jobs are only going to come if there are some things here to be done and people are required to do those things. And in agriculture, we have the potential to create substantial numbers of jobs in those investments that I'm talking about. And that is where private sector investment, I can tell you, there's a piece of land in San Fernando, on the eastern side of as you enter San Fernando, called the Old Ice Factory. It was just beginning to become a squatter's site. It was in the hands of the private sector under a lease. The private sector came to us and said, listen, if we can get the government to cooperate with us and to partner with us, we will convert that old ice factory site just east of the fire station in San Fernando into a modern housing project. So it's state land, earning nothing, on its way to become a squatter site. Right now, as I speak to you, the cabinet has approved, after proper process, the cabinet has approved a housing project there for affordable housing of over 100 units to be built. The Minister of Housing is here. How many units are you going to build there? Over 100 units to be built on an abandoned site where the government owns it, and now the private sector had the lease and is now going to spend private sector money. And I could tell you, who is going to benefit from that? At the HDC, there are over 100,000 applicants for houses that will never come because the government cannot reasonably be expected to house everybody in Trinidad and Tobago who apply for a house at the HDC. And that's why you hear people telling you, oh, I applied 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Because if we are building 2,000 houses in the government program, when are you going to satisfy 100,000 applicants? 50 years, it says. And as fast as you supply, the list keeps growing. So you know what we're doing? You would have heard I mentioned somewhere along the way. We are about to get cabinet approval for the restructuring of the HDC. The HDC is to be restructured into two parts, two subsidiaries. One is going to be a landlord entity, where all the existing HDC properties and premises will fall under management and control by a company and a management and staff that deals with a landlord arrangement with those properties. And we are going to digitize it. So the HDC at that office of that company will know every single HDC property and know exactly who is in there and their terms and conditions, and you know it will never happen again where somebody is paying $12 a month rent and they owe $10,000. You ever heard that? Your rent is $100 a month. You have a job, but you owe the HDC $20,000. That is not going to happen again because a landlord relationship with the tenant or the mortgagor, the mortgagee, will develop. And the other entity is going to be a construction company that is engaged in the business of housing construction, which is HDC's core business. So you'll have engineers in there, quantity surveyors, project managers, land developers, and so on, and they will be doing the state's component of actual construction. What is happening right now, and I could tell you because I was the minister there, I'm now the prime minister, HDC is constantly losing its way because it doesn't know exactly whether it's a landlord or whether it's a contractor to build. When we clarify those two positions and put specialist staff, square pegs in square holes, and wrong pegs in wrong holes, the scene will change completely. And of course, because government doesn't have the volume of money required to satisfy those needs, the private sector is being encouraged because they can mobilize funding, they can manage the construction better, and they too can tap into the HDC list when the units are built and provide a market for the builder and contractor. We create employment. We create economic activity. That's what we do. And as we do it, you heard Minister Rambarat say tonight, we just come out of a budget debate. The only mark they could have bust is about somebody renting property. I don't know since when renting property to anybody, even the government, is a crime. So when it was said that Kamala Prasad Bisesa family rented property, they were so offended. It's as though you accuse them of doing something wrong, as if you accuse them of a crime. A rental involves a service that you provide for which the user pays. That's what renting is. I'm sure some of you in this room renting where you live in, I hope you're well taken care of otherwise, but rental is not a crime. But they will have you believe that, so as long as they say that there's a rental, that is a crime. But let me tell you what a crime is. Talking about what they were doing. I went to Barbados soon after I became Prime Minister. I was there and I was with some friends I played golf with. One of them came and said to me, there's a man from somewhere here in Barbados who wants to see you. I said, see me, what about? About some money that the government of Trinidad and Tobago owe him. I said, well, he will not be seeing me, because that's not how the government of Trinidad and Tobago, under my government, deals with money is owed to anybody, so I'm not seeing anybody. I never saw the person. But later on, about a year or so later, I was advised by the Attorney General that a foreign company, a foreign country, was doing an investigation into a corrupt practice between the government of Trinidad and Tobago and its agents and a supplier of vessels to Trinidad and Tobago. Those diamond vessels that were bought election year 2015. Somewhere in there, a finder's fee of over $200 million was paid by the Dutch company to somebody who lived in a room in somebody's house in Barbados through a company in St. Lucia. And what attracted the Dutch government to it was the size of the payment, because they have certain restrictions as to how much you could pay. Apparently, in Holland, a company is allowed to pay between 1% and 4% in some kind of finder's fee arrangement. This thing in Trinidad was almost 20% that was paid. Not for the boats, for the people who organized the deal. And then I have to be hearing the UNC telling me all the time about procurement, 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 procurement. They know exactly what they're talking about, because that's exactly what they were doing. There's a criminal investigation on right now into that matter. You understand what I'm telling you? And that is why they believe that when we talk to our private sector or any private sector asking to do something in a situation where the government is up to its eyeball in debt, and if we are going to take these young people out of a position they are in to one that gives them an opportunity for a future, they believe that it has racket in it, because all they know is racket. And that is why they are so hell-bent on trying to get rid of the Attorney General, because he has been out front and very successful in prosecuting white-collar crime in Trinidad and Tobago. And a lot of it is going to come out in the public in some time in the future. I couldn't say when, because it is not a matter for the government after the facts have been found, it's a matter for the police and the courts. But they somehow believe if they create enough rah-rah in the country, and if the Prime Minister is stupid enough to get rid of the Attorney General, then they have a straight run to escape. You must remember, this is the same group of people who changed a law in the Parliament, proclaimed Section 34 Independence Night, when all of us watching fireworks up in the air, them creating loophole for their friends to escape, and those persons have not yet. It's about 20 years now. UNC financiers who go before the court have not seen the courthouse door. They're still in preliminary inquiries. Praise the Lord, I've heard the Attorney General say, come January morning, preliminary inquiries will be a thing of the past in Trinidad and Tobago. Imagine police charge you for a matter with evidence that got you arrested, but you could spend 20 years in the court. The court could spend 20 years determining if you have a case to answer. Would you believe that? And that is what they want, That's what they're trying to prevent from coming to another place. an improvement in our situation. We are talking about Lady Hills Avenue in San Fernando, private sector money again for housing. We're talking about Rocky Point in Tobago. It's about 40 years that that Rocky Point site has been there, designated a hotel site. It was in the hands of people who kept saying that they could have found money to build the hotel. They never did, but they held on to the property in one way or the other. Eventually, the property ended up back into the state's hand in UTEC. We are talking about growing the tourism economy in the country, especially in Tobago. So the cabinet asked that we go out publicly and see if there's anybody who would want to invest their money in the hotel project in Tobago. Fortunately, a local consortium who could easily have spent their money in St. Lucia or Jamaica or Costa Rica or Barbados decide to spend their money in Tobago. You know they have a problem with that. And already beginning to organize their imps, their pimps, and the chimps in Tobago to stop the project. That's what they're about, you know. I want anybody in this room to put your hand up if you know anything of any positive nature in this country that has been advanced for the people of Trinidad and Tobago that the UNC is supporting. Tell me. I'm sure you could tell me everything that they're against, but you tell me one thing that has been advanced for the people of Trinidad and Tobago that the UNC is supporting. And that is the predicament of the young people of La Horquetta, of Enterprise, of Tobago, of Point 14, because without the PNM, all you're dead. There'll be nothing for you. It takes visionary understanding. It takes commitment and a will to do what is right and do what has to be done. And this government is going to do it, and we'll stand the consequences, because it is you, the people, who will be the beneficiary of what we are going to do. And it will be you, the people, who will decide whether you want us to continue in office or whether you want to bring back the imps, the chimps, and the pimps. You will have to do that. So when we say we are encouraging our private sector to invest their money or to use their capacity to borrow, to do housing, to do agriculture, to go into business, sometimes they need the government to help in either providing the land, or as an old PNM policy from day one is, sometimes they might need the government to be a partner. Look at right now, we need a marina in Tobago to attract the yacht business south away from the Caribbean into the safe area of Trinidad and Tobago. And that marina may not come to pass unless the government is a partner in it. But we want it done. And if the government is required to be a partner in the business, the government will be a partner as long as that is what is required to get the business to Tobago for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we make no apologies for those who only could see the negatives of this country. I have no doubt that this country has a lot of negatives, not the least of which is a large body of misguided youths. And you would think that those who profess to love this country and to want to see us progress will want that to be addressed. A large potential for unemployment. But at the same time, the country has tremendous potential for opportunities. And all they could see is, you know, I think they're doing this and I think they're doing that. I suspect they're doing this and I suspect they're doing that. A thief hates to see another man with a bag, you know. You know that, right? So we have a number of projects. For example, we talk about the regeneration of Port of Spain, the city, our capital city, which have been left by others in very many ways to deteriorate. So we talk about the reconstruction of areas of Port of Spain. There are sites in Port of Spain that can be utilized in a way to build a city, create more housing or new business, and of course, as you're doing that, you're creating employment and you're creating wealth. You think we can expect any support from any of them for that? It is too hard for them to say, the country is doing well, this is a good project, and talk about it and talk it up. You go and talk to any Grenadian, You will hear how they're boasting about their sandals. The Grenada Sandals was the old Atok Hotel, the Source Hotel. That Sandals came in and took over, refurbished it to their standard and actually expanded it. It is now one of the gems in Grenada. There's another major hotel project taking part in Jamaica by a foreign investor. And if you hear Grenadans boasting about that and telling you how it is driving Grenada's economy, you could never get anybody in this country to say that, because they figure if you say that, you're supporting the PNM. Especially in Tobago. They will get Tobagoans to be crying down their own opportunities. You could imagine we are talking about a terminal building in Tobago to properly house and handle tourists coming into Tobago, because the current airlines telling you, if you don't upgrade the airport terminal, we will stop coming to Tobago. When a jumbo lands in Tobago, people all out in the road, in the rain, on the step, boarding the plane from on the step. And you have people telling you, don't build the airport terminal building. So I have to conclude that they want the airlines to pull out. And they want Tobago to be grounded and stay where it is or go backwards. Well, that is not going to happen. We are building the airport terminal in Tobago for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And it makes you wonder, you know, every single one of the other small islands in the Caribbean has a proper modern airport. But they have to be going and telling you, don't build one in Tobago. And you have to ask yourself, why? Who in this room has been to St. Vincent recently? Who? You see the airport? It has transformed their presentation to the world. Your airport is the first place a visitor sees when he comes in by air, he or she comes in by air. There's an argument that the Barbados airport was built by Trinidad and Tobago money. And we are telling ourselves to do a proper airport terminal building in Tobago for modern jet traffic is a problem. And you know what? We borrowed the money to do it. We didn't borrow the money to thief it. That's why I'm so happy that after 6 years, they can't point their finger at a minister in this government who is to have done something wrong under my stewardship. And I keep telling my colleagues, I could tell you every one of them, I tell them work hard, learn as much as you could, contribute as much as you could to this government and this country, but don't fall in love with office, because you never know when you're going to lose it. And left to Kamala alone, you lose tomorrow morning, you lose it because she wants the president to resign, she wants the prime minister to resign, the attorney general to resign, the priest to resign, the judge to resign. She wants the whole country to resign, and she will stand predominating Trinidad and Tobago. That's what they're all about. Create mischief. I mean, you heard the Minister of Agriculture just now say, after 5 years of a government that got its political support in the rural agricultural area, they cannot point to a single agricultural project in their 5-year term. That is true. That is a fact. Because they don't think they don't have to. They don't have to do that. They don't have to complain. They don't have to campaign. They don't have to do nothing. Just bar talk the PNM. Engage in racial stupidity and destruction and play the victim. That's what they're all about. This country has work to be done, and it is people who want to work for this country who you should pay attention to. Imagine we have to go to Parliament and we have to wait to be summoned by the President, by the Speaker, to go to the Parliament to try and give them an opportunity to lambaste the President. They're not content with lambasting others who are available to them in the political arena. When all else fails in politics, you attack the office of the President, and that will make you look big and bad. But are waiting for them to come to the Parliament with that foolishness, are waiting. And all the women in this country must wait to find out from Kamala Persad-Bissessar why she is so disrespectful to the President of Trinidad and Tobago, who is also a woman. All of you must ask that question. You see? Because apparently, it's like some of them fellas you know outside, if I can't get you, I'm going to mash it up. If I can't get you, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to mark your face with a knife or throw acid on you. That's what you're seeing there. That's what you're seeing there. In our country, when in this difficult period, we are required to buckle down. How nice would it have been if we could have counted on the opposition to fix some of the problems that we no need fixing. But we cannot count on the opposition for a vote on anything in the parliament. They are supporting nothing. The very simple matter of protecting young girls in child marriage, even that they're not supporting. You know what they're doing right now? By proxy, all of them in the courthouse. Because they love courthouse, eh? When your politics ineffective in the political arena, on the streets and elsewhere, you head for the courthouse. They are all now quietly, busily, before the Privy Council, arguing that the saved law clauses in our law, meaning those laws we inherited at independence by virtue of change of ownership of the state, where the Queen no longer owned us as part of her realm, those laws that were saved at independence are now to be dismissed. One of those laws is the death penalty. The death penalty. But there are many, many more. And the same sort of people are in the courts elsewhere, with no discussion in this country, arguing for bail for murderers. So you get charged for murder, you should be given bail, because that is your right. I want to ask the people of Trinidad and Tobago tonight, in this country, this land of murder and mayhem, where so many tens or possibly hundreds of witnesses have been killed, when you go and change the law now to make it a right that once you charge for murder, you get bail to come out, how many witnesses you'll get to carry before the court after? And what is going to become of us as a people when we change our laws to that? And what is this priority in some people's priority book? That is a priority. That's what we need now. We need more murderers on the street, as if we don't have enough already. But the ones that you identify and you charge will join you at Hot Shop to buy roti. Because we out on bail. And that is what they're promising you. And all the people in the private sector who have the means to cooperate with the government, all the UNC is doing is denigrating them. Denigrating them. If the president mentions your name as somebody to serve on a commission somewhere, and the UNC only get to find out, and they will find out, because the president is required to consult the opposition leader, you know what she does? Rather than answer the president in a job relationship, is to go on platform and make manima with your name. That's what they're doing. Because they set out to make life difficult. At least Baz Diopandi came out openly and said when he was opposition leader and he wasn't making any headway against the PNM juggernaut, he will make the country ungovernable. But I really cannot say that Baz Diopandi had tried to put life into that statement. It was a political statement that he said, meaning that they will be on the street if they could encourage people on the street and so on and so on. But I could tell you, there is a deliberate, actionable agenda by the Kamla Prasad Bisesa group of imp, chimp, and pimps to make this country a hellhole. That's what they're doing. They believe that they can only be successful if the country is failing. They can't be a successful political party in a country that is progressing and doing right. Unfortunately, that is their view. But we in the PNM, whether things are going well or whether things are going bad, we are here come hell or high water for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and we go from one place to another, from one era to another, from one decade to another, and this country will progress with us, or we will live in the ashes if this country is burned down. They don't have that. Whatever they can destroy, whoever they can destroy, they believe it can help them. I tell you, I am sick and fed up of their behavior. This country deserves better. I have been in politics in this country for 40 years. I've been in parliament for many decades. I have never met a more disgraceful bunch of people in or out of the parliament that I have no respect for, because they have no love and no respect for the people in Trinidad and Tobago. And they believe that they are entitled. They believe that they are entitled to office. They believe that they are entitled to the treasury. They believe that they're somehow superior in intellect, and you see them making a fool of themselves over and over and over. And you ask yourself, what would have become of the people of Trinidad and Tobago had they been in charge of your affairs? Don't borrow, don't borrow, don't borrow, you're making debt. How would they have dealt with the pandemic? I told you I went to the corporations in 2016 to ask them to focus on investing in Trinidad and Tobago. That was before COVID. COVID came late 2019, and by early 2020, we had to spend huge amounts of money to keep body and soul together in this country. What would they have done? How many of you are alive today who would have died in a situation where the government would have done nothing and the government would not borrow anything? How many of you? And unfortunately, that sentiment spreads from the political nothingness into other areas of our society. Because you're hearing people telling you, everything the government says about the children to go to school. There are those who never will say, okay, we're in a difficult situation, let's try and make it work, let's try and help out. Is against this, or against that, or against this. There's nothing that you can come up with. Minister, have you finished the SCA exams? Have the children got the results from SCA exams? How many problems we had with that? SCA came and it went. You had CXC exams. Results came out. That gone? Isn't that, has that gone? Could we count on some people in this country to say, let's try and get it done in a difficult situation? Unless we change that attitude in this country, our difficulty will be multiplied. It will become manifold. We can accept our difficulties. We can identify drawbacks. We can identify that we must make change. But we must not lose hope. We must never lose hope. This is the land of hope and glory, as the Calypsonians say. That glory, we can look backwards and say, we have arrived. But then we must have hope that there are higher heights to be reached. Don't let anybody make you believe that your country is less than it is. Those of you who have children, it is this that is their home. And this is a place better than most in the world. It's only when you go outside you get to know how good Trinidad and Tobago is. You hear them talking about property tax as though somebody coming to cut your throat with a razor blade. But all them who talking, they own property in Miami and Toronto, and they're first in the line to go and pay it. You understand? And they would mislead you until you take inappropriate action. But you hear the people of Horquetta, Talparo, they came to you with ham, lamb, jam, fridge, stove, and you voted PNM. And that is why I have such tremendous confidence in the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I have confidence in the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I am of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a living testimony to public policy. I know what public policy can do in a family and to an individual. I'm one of 6 boys in my father's household. I was the last one. I was the first and only one to have gone to high school. Today I'm the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago as a result of public policy. There are thousands of nurses out there today keeping us alive, and doctors. At the time when they were being trained, nobody knew that a day will come in this country's history when they will stand between us and a destiny of destruction. But today, we have them there. Because our country always holds a lifeline out for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I ask you to grasp it and ignore Kamla Prasad Bisesa and her imps, chimps, and wimps. They have nothing to offer and except hatred, lies, and deceit. That's what they have to offer. Imagine the opposition leader going in parliament, going before the press in a press conference to go and say, the president Well, she's not sure if the president has lost some mental faculties yet, but she's getting there. What an outer place little dry foot one. But I ask you to dismiss those things. Dismiss them. There's another side to this country. And that side is the enthusiasm of our young people being led by Foster Cummings in the Ministry of Youth Development. The budget contains tremendous opportunity for all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I ask you to grasp it. Anything worth having is worth fighting for. Anything worth fighting for requires effort. But you have to believe in yourself first, and then trust those who you ask to represent you. And as it stands now, you've asked the PNM to make a path for you in this very difficult world. I go to Scotland on the 30th. The world is coming to Scotland for COP26 to deal with the climate change issues and to deal with the funding of the change that is required to be made. These are serious issues that we are engaged in. Trinidad and Tobago is there because we are, in fact, being identified as one of the major polluters in the world on a per capita basis. We're supposed to be number one. So we have to be there to look out for our interests and to ensure that whatever changes are being made, that Trinidad and Tobago's interest is looked after, and as I go. And when I do that, I go leaving a government in place in the good hands of my colleagues who have done so for 6 years. Trinidad and Tobago under the PNM is a different place. It's a different place. This government that we lead is not a bicycle that you give everybody a tush to ride up and down the street. Under the last government, every member of the cabinet was given a tush as prime minister. Never happened in this government. Never happened. While I haven't traveled for a year and a half, when I did travel before, I could leave this country in the hands of an acting prime minister and know that it is in the hands of a good government, a good bunch of people that you have chosen, not the least of which join us here for the first time in government, Foster Cummings. And of course, we have a Minister of Education in whom we are all proud, looking out for all our children. We have a Minister of Education in her ministry, 2 ministers of education, 2 mothers of young children. Never happened before in this country. So when they speak about education, they're talking about home story, dining table issues, because they have the children in their house in their hands. Ladies and gentlemen, these are not the best of times. They're not even good times, but they are hopeful times. And we will make it work. We will make it. Thank you and good night.